Now I have been joined by Dr. Kpessa Whyte, who is an NDC parliamentary aspirant for Shai Osudoku. We are also expecting Amoako, Twum, who is a government spokesperson. I'll start with you, Doc. Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to our viewers.
Good morning to you. How are you? We haven't seen you in a while.
I've been around and doing a lot of stuff.
What have you been up to?
Well, of course,
how's the elections going?
as you know,
Campaign.
I continue to work in the university, so I continue to live up to the responsibilities of that duty. But more importantly, I also continue to do stuff in my constituency to ensure that NDC is given a much more robust representation in the next parliament.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we'll delve right into our first story here.
Okay.
I'm reading from citinewsroom.com, and it says, Taadi kidnappings, I'm focused on resolving case, not resigning. That's coming from the CID boss. So the Director General of the Criminal Investigations Department, CID, COP Maame Tiwaa Adodankwa, says she is focused on the resolution of the Taadi kidnapping case and not calls for her resignation. Speaking at an event organized by Commonwealth Africa, the under-fire CID boss remarked that she would not waste time thinking about any possible resignation at the moment. So I'm going to quote her briefly, and then we'll hear your response to what she had to say. When you have everybody calling for your resignation and other things, the question you need to ask is that what will solve the problem? The problem for us to solve, and that is my focus. I have to focus to bring whatever situation we have to the conclusive stages, not to waste time thinking about whether you want to resign or you don't want to resign. So when it is time for me to leave, I will leave because somebody was there and I am here, and another person will be here. So what she's saying, in just to summarize it, is she's not going to be in this position forever. Just like she came to meet someone will come to meet her. We should focus instead on solving this issue, bringing our girls back, and not necessarily fixating on her resignation. Doc, your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that, I picked a flag from the statement, especially the portion that you quote as coming from her directly. And what bothered me is the use of the phrase, waste time. I mean, when Ghanaians who pay public officers across board are concerned about specific issues and are saying it does appear that the issues are not being resolved the way they should be resolved, and so maybe whoever is mandated or is in charge needs to give way to another person, and that person considers the calls coming from the public as a waste of time, or waste of energy and waste of talk. I feel that is very unfortunate.
I think she's referring to her time, not focusing so much on the calls for her to resign, but actually investing time in finding the solution.
I don't think that anybody is asking her to even focus on the calls, but let's actually face the reality. Every single time this issue of the Takrady girls is reported in the news, I am tempted to believe that the families of these girls go through some agony. And even if it is established that the girls have passed on, maybe that will bring some closure to this issue. But that is not established. And so I can imagine fathers, mothers, and other close family members on regular basis going through the day with pain and going through sleepless nights, trying to imagine what could be happening to these loved ones. And given where we are now, after several months, I think that it is appropriate that the CID boss considers the calls coming from the public as a demonstration of lack of confidence in her ability or the ability of her outfit to resolve this matter appropriately. And I also do think that calling on her to resign does not necessarily mean that people are saying that they hate her or they don't like her. It is probably another way of saying that there could be somebody out there, perhaps within the police service, who, when given the opportunity, can resolve this matter expeditiously. And so maybe she just have to kind of step aside, move, and continue her policing service, because people are not saying she should resign from the police service. My understanding is that people are just saying that she being at the top may probably be demonstrating a certain level of incompetence that will percolate and go down to maybe even the officers that are on the case. And so if she can step aside and maybe more experienced, more capable hands are brought in to resolve this matter, that would probably be better for Ghana. This is an issue that, in my view, every political party and every individual should be passionately concerned about, because it could happen to anybody's family. And in the life of every nation, there are issues that tend to unite the nation, and I think this is one of the things that unite us as a country. We must look for these girls, and we must look for them very fast. And we must also do so knowing that it is an issue that really, really borders on the pain of particular families. And so I think that the call is, in my view, I mean, right, because it isn't like this happened last week and they are asking her to resign now. We've been here for several months. Some other folks were kidnapped from Canada. Theirs was quickly resolved, and then ours continue to remain in a mystery. These factors raise a number of questions around this issue, and I think the earlier we resolve it, the better.
Okay, so we have with us now government spokesperson, Amoako. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. So we're discussing the CID boss saying that she's focused on solving the issue with the kidnapped girls as opposed to resigning. Should she have even addressed this at all? People have been asking her to resign since she made the statement about the girls being found, right? So months later, is it necessary for her to have responded at all? And is there some merit to people saying, hey, perhaps step aside and let someone else handle it because we are not happy with the way you've handled things so far?
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, Dr. Whyte. Good morning to the viewers of Citi TV. I haven't been here for a while. Yeah. You've changed your set.
Yeah, you used to be a regular.
Anyway, I mean, I think that, to be honest with you, some of the commentary that has come surrounding the CID boss, I find a bit distasteful. Okay. And I even point to the fact that it's probably because she's a woman, and some of these things are almost like chauvinistic in terms of how people have portrayed her as being incompetent.
Don't you think it has a lot more to do with her merits than her gender?
Not at all. I mean,
really?
And I am a father. I have daughters. Mm-hmm. And so for anybody to even imagine going through such trauma when these girls have been missing for almost a year now, mm-hmm. It's something that no parent or even guardian would fathom. So it's unfortunate. It's extremely disheartening, and even the thought of it is actually something that nobody would actually appreciate and would even expect that would happen to anybody. So for anybody to suggest that there's a certain inertia or even indolence from the part of the CID boss, and as a result of comments that she must have made over a period based on, as far as I'm concerned, intelligence that was available to her at the time. It's really unfortunate. And I think that we've even focused this whole thing wrongly, if you ask me. If you're talking about ultimate responsibility, I do understand why a lot of people were calling for the head of the CID boss when there was an IGP. Mm-hmm. When there was an IGP.
They called for his head as well.
No, but the same. And I think that there's a certain obsession with the NDC on this Tiwaa Adidanka, the CID board. Some of them have even gone on to make all sort of ridiculous suggestions.
You don't think it's the general country? Because even
ridiculous suggestions
that even family members of the girls have called for her to resign because she's not done enough.
You see, that is the legitimate right of every guardian to express or prefer views or opinions of these things. I have no challenge with that. But it's almost like an obsession, a certain, if you like, bullying of somebody who has served the police service to this point.
Has she done enough?
Again, the point is that, and I think she made a very valid point there, she did not appoint herself as CID boss. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so she can't go and even say that I am resigning.
No, she can't. She can't say she can't resign. She can't
go and say that I am resigning as CID boss and put me somewhere.
But unless, Eric, of course, has she done enough in her role as CID boss?
That's investigation for another person. I'm sorry.
Let me ask the question. Has she done enough?
No, listen.
It's about to be a year since the girls were kidnapped. You're rightly saying that perhaps people are attacking her because she's a woman. She should actually empathize with them more because she's a woman. Has she done enough in her role as CID boss to solve this problem?
So how am I, you and I, and what do you call it? Dr. Whyte, be able to sit here and establish even as what the things that have happened, mm-hmm. or the work that has gone into trying to investigate this. Of course, for the families or for even the ordinary folks, all that they are interested in is the people, the kids that have been kidnapped or are missing, would be brought back, and even like you said, if it happens that the most unfortunate has happened, it brings a certain level of closure to that. We cannot sit here and pretend that we know the amount of work that has gone into this thing, and that because of that, she has shown a certain level of incompetence. Again, like she said, I don't speak for the police, I don't speak for her, but there's a certain level of merit in what she's saying, that I didn't put myself there, right? And that if people are calling for my head, I will continue to do my work until the time when the authority that puts me there would remove me. You understand? So you can't just say that and I don't know the rules and regulations in the police service, but once you've been assigned a role or you've been posted to a certain position, you can't go to your boss and say that I'm resigning from this particular position, but I still want to continue to stay in the police service. Again, this whole conversation around, some Canadians were kidnapped and then
within 2 weeks.
Within 2 weeks and all of those things. There's also other examples where, and I feel that whilst we always expect the best, the very best from our police service, it's also imperative that when some things happen and they're able to show a certain level of, if you like, professionalism and dispatch in their work, they're also commended. There are other incidents that have happened where they have also used the same resources to be able to get to the bottom of it, without sounding insensitive. You see, this whole conversation around missing girls and everything, like I made a point. I am a parent. If my child is missing for 2 hours, I'll be extremely...
so
do you understand?
Parent,
so,
Eric, as
so,
a parent,
so, let me make my
okay.
point. I think that, right. So it is important that we decouple the emotional aspect of it or to the professionalism and all of the work that the police does. You understand? I'm one of those people who will sit here any day and say that even some of the methods that are being used by the police today is archaic. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. They can do more and benchmark their practices to what happens pertains elsewhere. But this whole idea that it has almost become a political conversation where we are focusing too much on this one person just because people find it politically expedient. I believe strongly, and I would back any conversation around, let's get to the bottom of it. But let's deal with this thing in a manner that will bring finality to the issue and closure. Again, the issues to do with the Canadian girls and these girls are totally different because apparently, I'm not privy to that, but apparently the process of even the reporting and everything, I would even sit here and say that at the point when I think a suspect was actually taken to police custody, and that suspect found a way of actually breaking jail. That is even more dangerous. Yeah, that is even more dangerous for me, and more important to me to get to the bottom of the matter. I've heard that the family has actually petitioned the IGP to say that what is happening to the 4 police officers
who assisted with it.
Okay, you understand? So
Eric, let's get back
let's
to the CID boss. These girls were kidnapped almost a year ago. The families have come out to say that she has not engaged them in any way. The first time we heard her speak on the matter, she said the girls had been found. Now, these are family members who are already traumatized as is. You talk about having girls. If your girls had been kidnapped, you're already traumatized. So someone in charge of bringing them back home assures you that they've been found, then comes back a couple of weeks later to say, I was just saying that to calm tempers. Then the next time you hear from her, it's not even perhaps developments around the DNA you submitted, whether or not the skeletons found belong to your girls, but to defend why she should resign or why she shouldn't, because it's not even in her place to resign if she even wanted to resign. Is that sensitive enough to the families who are already going through not seeing their girls for almost 1 year?
No, but that's why I'm saying that. You see, you have to decouple the work that she does as a CID boss, right? So I know that, for instance, in the last year or so many other incidents have happened regarding crime or what that the CID, again, the same CID that she is meant to be the boss of, have been able to unravel. You understand? So my point is that when people call for her resignation, those things are legitimate. But she made a point, and I think that we are even belaboring this thing. She made a point that she cannot be focusing on resigning She has to be focusing on getting to the bottom of the matter, and to the point where the police, and it's a police service that decides to take this individual here or there, until the people who actually appointed her into that position decide to move her elsewhere. And I'm saying that the resignation is not something that is in what do you call it, in conformity with the rules and regulations of the police service. It means that it's either she actually resigns from the police service or
she's transferred.
She's transferred.
Okay.
And so it doesn't, it's not within her remit.
So, Doc, is it a bit unreasonable for Ghanaians to be targeting her person as a CID boss? Because maybe in her right, saying perhaps we know the location of where the girls are, she's engaging the public. She's letting us know that we are communicating with you, letting you know the progress. But it seems as though we are always being defensive. The minute she says something, the people are just being defensive and not even understanding that this is an investigation that is unique. We don't deal with kidnappings on a daily basis in this country, so we should at least empathize with her on the work that she's doing and not call for her resignation as if that's going to solve the problem.
Well, I think that we must, first of all, I have not seen anything that is targeted at her person.
Okay.
I've heard so many comments from your ilk, even
Eric,
suggesting that she's related to the president.
No, he didn't interrupt when you were speaking.
Can we deal with the issues as have been raised in the news?
All right, that's fine.
I have not heard anything that is targeted at her person.
Okay.
I have heard things targeted at the public office she's holding.
Okay.
And that public office is held in trust for Ghanaians. Ghanaians make payment to that public office. That public office is expected to solve problems. A particular problem has arisen. Almost a year down the line, the problem hasn't been solved. And Ghanaians are basically saying that, look, we cannot continue to pay for incompetence and grass. And therefore, you probably need to move out of that office and let somebody else occupy the office so that they can resolve this matter. I don't think that this is an unfair, expectation from Ghanaians at all. And this idea that he cannot resign, and so somebody has to push her out of the place. I'm hearing it for the first time in public administration. You occupy a position and you cannot resign, and somebody has to get you out of that place. She can't resign and remain in the police service.
She can't.
She can't resign as a CID boss and
the
remain
dereliction
in
of
the police
duty.
service.
According to her, someone has to transfer her. She can't, on her own authority, say, I'm resigning.
You know,
so maybe maybe the IGP should order for her resignation, but
I don't buy. You see,
her resigning on her own.
This idea that does she have a conscience? Does she have integrity? Does she have responsibility?
It still has to do with the
because
order of the job.
If I occupy that position, and I want to believe that it probably would be the case in your case and any other person who really, really is thinking about this issue more, why do you want to occupy a place where it is very obvious that you are unable to resolve this issue? And let's face it, this issue about her resigning, I don't think it is based on this particular issue alone. There is a catalog of other issues that have surrounded her performance in that office.
Like what? What issues?
Like the issues that involve the conversation with A+, for instance.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And then there have been several, incidents as well. So clearly, the call is coming from an accumulation of things. But let me also be quick to say that this idea that she's engaging the public whenever she speaks is baffling. Because the content and the quality of what she puts out is either contradicting herself or is confusing. One time we found them, other time we are carving nerves. Another time we don't know what's happening.
I think she said she knew the location, not necessarily.
Well, if you knew the location, it means we found them.
Okay.
If you knew the location, we found them. But here we are, there isn't anything, and we continue to inflict pain. And for me, that is what really matters. This idea that she is a woman and people are targeting her womanhood, it is because she's a woman that the approach to solving this problem should even be different and expeditious, because she is a mother. And there are other mothers that are going through terrible pain as a result of this. So let's not try to make this thing a gender-related, because that would be very unfair to the mothers involved. My point is very simple. We are in a democracy. Democracy is premised on public opinion to a very large extent, because the other way of having the election in between regular elections is public opinion. The public opinion at this point in time appears to suggest that Ghanaians have lost confidence in her performance. And so they are asking that she makes way for another person to occupy that place. If she is unwilling to do it, well, of course, then the IGP, and of course, the person who appoints the IGP will have to also take some responsibility for continuing to keep her in that particular position.
Okay, now, Eric, speaking of the IGP, the acting IGP, just a few days ago, made his way to Takrade, engaged the families. They were so happy. Should she take some steps from him as far as maybe saying, I've done the best, maybe someone else will handle this a different way, so I agree with the general public, my superiors should transfer me elsewhere because I've done the best I can do?
But you see, that's what I'm saying, that we're talking about democracy here. And sometimes we take expedient positions, which is unfair.
Okay.
The police service is governed by rules and regulations. You understand? Now, as a subordinate, you can't go to your boss and tell in the police service and say that I am unable to perform this task. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm saying that because of that, if well and truly she has to be moved, that decision doesn't lie with her. Unless, of course, she decides, people leave the police. You have people who left the police service and went to contest NDC.
So her superiors are not listening to Ghanaians.
No, but that is
if that's the situation where she can't move and her superiors are also not moving her.
We would always speculate and conjecture until we have the full facts on the ground as to the kind of work that has gone into. From where I sit, I know that a lot of work has gone into. But like I said, for a parent, for a sister or brother or a relative or a friend, they don't really care about how much work that you have put into until they get to a point where the girls are found, you find results.
Okay, so let's go for a quick break. We're going to go for a quick break and continue.
We cannot sit here
This is
and
Breakfast Daily.
pretend as if
Let
that
us
no
know
work has been
what
done
you're
and there's
thinking
no
with the
efforts to do
hashtag
anything.
Breakfast Daily, and the WhatsApp line is 0550-585-832. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Breakfast Daily on Citi TV. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, before the break, we were talking about the CID boss saying that people shouldn't focus so much on her resignation, but we should focus on solutions. I still have with me Dr. Michael Kpessa Whyte, who's an NDC parliamentary aspirant for Shai Osudoku, and Eric Amoako, who's a government spokesperson. So we're just going to move on from the kidnapping girls to PDS. And I'm reading from citinewsroom.com. The minority is asking the U.S. government to probe into the PDS fiasco. So it says here, confused, in quotes, NPP government can't be trusted with PDS fiasco probe. That's coming from Honorable Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa. So the minority in parliament has justified its decision to petition the U.S. government to investigate the power distribution service concession debacle. So I'm going to quote Mr. Ablakwa briefly, and he says here, and I think the entire minority agree, they say matters that are unfolding before us make it clear for us in the minority that the government cannot be trusted to investigate this matter. They are complicit, they have conducted themselves in ways that cannot allow for a thorough and independent investigation. The government itself is neck deep. The Minister of Energy talked about fraud, and the Information Minister said the PDS has been suspended. Then a few days later, we see a joint statement by ECG and PDS announcing to us that the suspended entity is going about their normal business and that they are going to collect our monies and be charged of meter reading and replacement. So it is clear to us that the government is totally confused. The mess is deepening by the hour. There are so many conflicting accounts. You don't know who to trust. So they go on and on and on and on to justify why they are asking the U.S. government to also do its own investigation. But then the Information Minister also come out to say that the U.S. Embassy never said so this is also from Ablakwa. So the U.S. Embassy never said they trusted the ongoing investigations. They rather called for a thorough investigation. If they trusted the investigation, they wouldn't even have issued a statement in the first place. So the Information Minister, this was on Eyewitness News yesterday, the Information Minister came out to say we are a sovereign country. The U.S. government itself is trusting us to do our investigations. So why should our minority go to them to say this? So Doc, I'm starting with you and flowing from even what the Information Minister said. Isn't it a bit of a stretch to ask a country to investigate another sovereign country, even if you are that country is the one funding the project we are discussing? Shouldn't we trust that the government will do what's in the best interest of all Ghanaians?
Well, I think there is a fundamental, simple question that can answer your question. What do we lose by asking those from whom we take money on regular basis, those from whom we seek technical and all kinds of assistance on regular basis, those from whom we have our kids going to school with scholarships and every time they want to study? What do we lose by asking them to probe an incident, in this case the PDS deal, in which they actually have a financial interest because it's related to the media project as well?
Doesn't that communicate that we are not confident in our own sovereignty? Because you won't hear US going to another country to say, investigate what's going on within our country. Well, irrespective of how Democrats might disagree with Republicans, they still agree that this is our internal affair and we should be able to fix it ourselves as a sovereign nation.
We have to get out of the theory and live in the real world.
Okay.
This idea that we are a sovereign country and we are whatever, it's a theory.
How so?
How so? Because how many of the things we finance in this country come from our internal sources? I mean, aren't we a sovereign country when we decided that we were bringing in US soldiers to come and do whatever they want and use our, frequencies and whatever they want to do?
Well, we were training them, right?
We were training them.
Yeah, on our tactics.
That's what you are made to believe. Okay. So anyway, let me just say that I do feel strongly that the minority have a point on this. Particularly so also because this deal was entered into by this government. And so to a very large extent, they are a party to the problem. Now, you cannot investigate yourself. And I think that the confusion emerging out of this, based on the pronouncements that have been made, which are alluded to in the minority statement, clearly suggests to me that if you allow just the government to investigate it, we may not have the full disclosure of things that needs to be disclosed. Secondly, we have also had investigations in this country conducted by the Ghanaian, government, especially under the current administration. And Ghanaians had high hopes of knowing what exactly transpired at the investigation. And then the reports have been basically classified and kept on the shelves. I have no problem with reclassification, but at least people must know when there is a high interest in the issues that are being investigated. And I felt that the information minister's comments were rather unfortunate.
Why?
Why? Because I feel that it will benefit this government if indeed the US government, which is a party to this whole project, also participates in the investigation.
But the US government itself has not asked to participate in the investigation.
It doesn't have to ask.
It's in their interest, right? Because they are the people who funded it. And they're saying, Ghana government, handle it. We trust you will do the right thing and let us know what happens.
I didn't hear them say they trust they will do the right thing. I do hear them say hear them say that the Ghana government should investigate it. But what I'm saying is that in all this, the government should actually be very happy that the minority is inviting the US government to participate in it, because if indeed the current government has nothing to hide and wants to be exonerated and wants all this description of incompetence, fraud, create to loot and share to be wiped off the government, then allow the US government, whose finance have been part of this deal, to come in and investigate. And when they investigate and they exonerate the Ghanaian government and tell us where the problems are, then we can say, yes, I think that great, you have done a perfect job. But as it is now, you know our political environment. Who exactly is going to be that individual who will constitute that committee to investigate this? And how trustworthy, how transparent, how thorough will they be in investigating it? It's like setting up a committee to investigate you yourself.
Okay.
And I think that I fully share the minorities. And I don't think that there should be a fuss about this, because honestly speaking, when I first read this statement, I said to myself, in the true spirit of governance, it is this government that will benefit if they have nothing to hide.
Okay, thank you. So, Eric, if the minority is saying that the US government invested in this whole operation, we don't necessarily trust the government anymore because it seems as though it might be implicated in the PDS saga. Is there anything wrong with them asking that, hey, we would want you to do an independent investigation as well? Just as the families of the Takrady kidnapped girls said, we don't trust our security agencies, we want a neutral body to do this, and we'll submit our DNA to them. Is there anything wrong with that if we've shown something to make them mistrust the way the government has handled it? Is it too much to ask for the U.S. government to do it? Isn't it a bit of a stretch for the information minister to use the whole sovereign nation argument?
I'm trying to sort of restrain myself on this particular matter. You see, I think that it's a ridiculous...
No, please, not on this set.
It's a ridiculous position
Why?
that's been taken by the minority. And it's classic NDC for you. What happened to the so-called bond issue that Akua himself petitioned the U.S. government on? And I think that he even took the wind out of my sail, where the U.S. ambassador, which basically is a representative of the U.S. government, had actually made an earlier call to government to investigate this thoroughly to get to the bottom of the matter. I mean, it's as if that the U.S. government does not know that it's party to this whole PDS arrangement coming from the Millennium Challenge and all commission and all of those, and what has happened in terms of their investment in our energy sector. So it's really red herrings as usual. Let's get our voices heard, because the people themselves have made a call to government through a statement that investigate. So if they have the option to do their own independent investigation, why would they ask government to do so in the first place?
But there's nothing wrong with another person asking them to do same.
You see, so then you go and petition them. And you see, let me tell you something. That's the NDC for you. NDC, when in government, signs a military agreement with the U.S. government.
There is
this government, listen, let me finish. I was very quiet. I was extremely quiet. Signs a military agreement with the U.S. government. A new government comes into place, executes that particular. They go on the streets and demonstrate.
Okay.
And then it comes out that they were actually the ones who signed this
So
thing.
he can clarify what you're saying if there's something that needs to be clarified. Okay, but let's get back to...
When I'm done, he can go there.
But shouldn't the government have at least ensured
what government has done?
Ghanaians won't doubt its neutrality in this PDS saga.
But the point is that this is a government that has shown enough conviction. And I'll tell the difference between an MPP government and an NDC.
We're not comparing MPP and NDC. We're focusing on the MPP government because that's the government of the day.
I'm giving you an example.
Okay.
Now, the government took steps to secure the assets of the state, which is ECG, by saying that some anomalies or breaches had been found.
Who signed in the first place?
5 months after that one has happened.
Where was you get a chance to respond.
Let me finish. And I'll punch holes in your logic.
Please go ahead.
Now, when that happened, the most important thing and the first thing that any government, any responsible government will do is to make sure that the state does not lose out.
Okay.
Which is securing the assets of the state, which is the ECG, and proceed to do its investigation. Now, there's a Supreme Court ruling recently on this Exton cubic thing that the president at the time sat in the comfort of his office and signed off a bauxite agreement to his own brother.
Yes, but that's not what we're discussing.
No, but I'm just giving you the difference.
Yes, but let's focus on the communication with energy minister and the information minister, which the minority raised.
I'm trying to make a point.
Okay.
Per this logic, this is two different governments. One that along the line finds that, okay, even though we have followed this process over this period, we've noticed that there are certain anomalies within this particular arrangement, and let's suspend the arrangement and deal with the matter. Compared to one that actually sits in the bosom of its office and signs off a bauxite agreement worth over $100 billion to his own brother. That is different. Again, this whole conversation around, well, the government is complicit, is also extremely laughable. The same government that is complicit in an arrangement, or the same protagonists or persons who are supposed to be part of this whole arrangement, decide that we will pull the plug on this particular arrangement, which we are meant to be beneficiaries of. To what end? Now, so for me, I think that 30 days is just probably around the corner in terms of the investigations. There was a team that was sent to the US for some deliberations, which is the same American government anyway. So for me, this call to even have the American government investigate is neither here nor there. It's red herring. Again,
please wrap up for us.
A team was sent to Qatar to ascertain if really this whole conversation around demand guarantee and everything will be dealt with. So really, let's allow the process to... What is most important to me? And I think that the NDC can continue to invest in propaganda. This government is focused on this work. We are finding more oil. We are creating an aluminum industry. We want to create jobs for young people. We are delivering on the flagship programs that we said we would do. So we are not going to be sidetracked by all this propaganda and all that.
But for the benefit of all of Ghana and our viewers, a couple of weeks ago, the energy minister came out and said they had identified an element of fraud within the operations of PDS, and that's why it's been suspended.
Then there was an official statement.
Yes, but
the government spokesperson.
Eric, let me finish my question so you can answer my question.
The same entity.
Doctor, you're not hosting the program.
I don't intend to host it.
Please. Energy Minister comes out to say we've identified an element of fraud in their operations, so we are suspending them and ECG is taking over. Then they meet and then we find out that they are working together. Shouldn't we provide some clarity into why we decided to say this organization is practically a fraudulent one? Maybe now they've cleared off whatever it is we had doubts in, and that's why they are now going to work with ECG so that the minority won't be so paranoid that they want an independent body to investigate what's going on with this PDS situation.
Governance is an extremely complex thing. Now you have a situation where the ordinary Ghanaian wants his electricity on. The businesses, the Makola woman, the hairdresser, the barber, the manufacturing concern,
they
Citi
all depend
TV,
on energy. So if the energy sector has issues, we all have a right to know what's going on in the sector. Yes, please.
Now, what happened was the suspension of PDS's license by the Energy Commission. But PDS as an entity does not cease to exist. You also have to be minded by the fact that all the workers, as part of the arena, all the workers who were working for ECG at the time are now actually workers of PDS. Now, for a certain normality and transition to happen, whilst investigations are ongoing in terms of suspension, then some arrangement has to be made. Now, issues to do with fraud. Again, I'm coming back to this whole democracy conversation. And we cannot pick and choose which one we like. And say that if I sit here and say that Dr. Whyte has indulged in an act of fraud or...
Especially if you're the minister of that sector.
Yes, that means that really we take it hook, line, and sinker, and that is the law.
Coming from a minister,
suspension is totally different from actually truncating. You understand? Because then you have found a breach. So my point is that it does not lie with the minister, and I can sit here and totally say that it does not lie with the energy minister, for instance, to say, regardless of PDS, to say that anybody is indulged in an act of fraud until it is determined by a court of competent jurisdiction.
Thank you.
So this whole conversation of democracy and all this and that we do has to be consistent.
Thank you, Eric.
And government's position is very simple, which is what was espoused by the Minister of Information.
But the energy minister also spoke and he said it was a fraudulent act.
What is interesting, listening to Eric, is that indeed there is massive confusion around this issue. Because it is, I mean, I think it is a responsible act to admit that the minister's comments versus the comments coming from ECG versus PDS, and then the comments now coming from the information minister are totally colluding and colliding. How so? Because the minister who is responsible for that sector comes out to use the word fraud.
Well, they said he didn't necessarily call the entire PDS fraud.
No.
They said they identified some.
I haven't said that. I said that he came out to use the word
fraud.
Can you just?
Yes, please go ahead.
Came out to use the word fraud to describe aspects of the contracts. Who signed it? What due diligence was done? What is the level of competence that went into that? What kind of scrutiny was done? What kinds of background checks were done? If all these questions were properly answered, we wouldn't have been where we are now.
Okay.
So when you sit and you sign an agreement, and sometime down the line, and by signing this agreement, you commit 30 million Ghanaians to a particular deal. Somewhere along the line, you yourself now comes to say aspects of it are fraudulent. This raises fundamental questions about your competence in managing the affairs of the country in the first place. The second issue is that I want to make it clear that, well, look, we are not here to compare governments.
Yeah.
We are here to speak to an issue occurring in the country at the moment. It so happened that the government in power presently is the MPP government. And so we must deal with the issues that the MPP government is engaged in, and the PDS is one of them. This idea of somebody sat in his office, and those are all conjectures. And it's part of the MPP's game plan of peddling.
But there's a Supreme Court ruling to that matter.
Okay.
I didn't make that.
And it might have been a reference as well.
Can I continue?
Yes. I didn't make that reference.
So let me just say that at some point in the life of a country, there comes a time when government makes itself look good when it decides to admit that, yes, we were completely wrong in terms of the scrutiny of this document. Okay? And in the spirit of being wrong, we, some individuals within, the minister and others, need to basically be chucked out.
Okay.
Because they have demonstrated. This government came to power on the back of describing somebody else as incompetent.
Okay, so your issue now, okay, please wrap up first.
Came to power on the back of describing some individuals as incompetent. We have seen from one, in fact, almost every week we see something that smacks of high levels of incompetence.
Okay.
And so it raises a question of, have Ghanaians been just deceived? Or has falsehood and propaganda been peddled, branded, and slapped on Ghanaians, bought into it, and then now we are beginning to see that there is a completely different picture altogether. Okay. If I decide to list the number of things that this government had engaged in since the last 2.5 years, that really insults the intelligence of Ghanaians, we will not be able to live here.
Okay, thank you. So your concern is perhaps the energy minister's communication, as far as seeing an element of fraud. He should have done his due diligence before coming out to say that.
No, that was my concern. The minister supersedes that ministry. I believe that his statement is born out of fact.
Okay.
Because his statement was not left to stand on its own. Following his statement, a statement was issued to suspend the deal.
Okay.
So that clearly suggests that indeed there was a fraud. But that was what happened.
That's not the sequence of events.
I'm not talking in sequence.
Okay, but
there are certain facts I'm trying to establish.
Yes, but they all have to align.
Yeah.
As well.
Yes, but they have to align.
Okay.
And the alignment is that the minister spoke and said that they had detected a certain fraud in the deal.
Okay.
Questioning their own competence. Then following that, the information minister issues a statement saying that government has suspended the deal. What else could one conclude?
Okay, so I'll allow Eric to conclude, but we've received messages from you, so I'll read that briefly. It says, she can still resign. If she were to be my mother or auntie, I would have advised her to resign to avoid disgracing herself all the time. So this is relations to the CID boss. Joseph says, okay, let me read this one. Good morning. Maame Tiwaa has not been helpful and supportive to the nation as a whole in the first place, and secondary to the families of the missing girls. After so many periods that she made her utterances concerning the missing girls, these girls have not been found. So clearly, if she continued to remain in power, it is obvious that there wouldn't be any improvement as it is happening now. Therefore, she needs to resign willingly and stop alluding to the fact that her resignation wouldn't solve the problem. It will indeed solve the problem because her presence in the office is blocking other competent people who can help in such findings. This is coming from Fred Ido from Gomwa Boduata. The most difficult work in the world today is being an MPP communicator because they can, okay. All right, this is coming from Abu Bakar. This is another from Pokwasi. I want to comment on this missing girls. The government should place a huge amount of money on this issue, such as 100,000 Ghana cedis as reward to anyone who brings information to solving the problem. I believe something good will come out of it. I have a lot of messages, but I can't continue all of them. So we'll move on to our very final topic here, and it has to do with fertilizer. Okay, so we've talked about holding our CID accountable. We've talked about holding some ministers accountable for communicating to us clearly about PDS and whatever the case may be. But we have to hold each other accountable as well. When we have fertilizer that's subsidized to help the country, let's not go selling it to someone else to make our own money. So I'm reading from citinewsroom.com, and it says, let's band together to address smuggling of fertilizers. And that's coming from the president. So I'll read briefly what he had to say. He says, we should all understand one thing. We use taxpayers' money to buy fertilizer and subsidize it by 50% in order to improve the productivity of our farmers. It is our money, but we have a handful of greedy criminals who smuggle fertilizer to Burkina Faso. I'm appealing to all of you, the traditional authorities, to help stop some of these things. I have seen the ones that have been seized. This is not right. So they've seized a lot of fertilizers, and it's not fair that fertilizers was used to develop a country is being smuggled. So, Eric, I will come to you here on the issue of fertilizer smuggling.
That is extremely unfortunate. If you look at the performance of the Agric Ministry, for instance, especially with regards to the planting for food and jobs, and you look at this spate of smuggling, you realize that maybe we would have even achieved more in terms of productivity than we are doing today. Now, I always say use this, I mean, and it's especially coming from the media, where let's assume that all the politicians in this town, including myself and Dr. Whyte on the other side, are as lousy as they claim. And everybody else, apart from that, is able to do what they are meant to do. We would have a fantastic country. And I think that this level of responsibilities, I mean, personal responsibility, should be exhibited by everybody. It's extremely unfortunate that we use taxpayers' monies to fund this thing in the quest to create, to develop this country for everybody in terms of what we want to do and what we aspire to do. And some individuals would want to profit from it. What it means is that there has to be a collective, and I think that the president was extremely right in terms of asking for some kind of support from the traditional authorities. Because we know that most of the farming that we do in this country, the agric we do in this country, actually is in the rural areas where our chiefs and our chiefs have very strong influence on those communities. And also expect that the security agencies, and I think that the way that we see these things being stopped at the border and other places, people have actually whistleblowed and stuff, means that people are minded by that. But people would always continue to do this. This is not the first thing that we have. We have issues to do with our premix fuel, fertilizer, all of these things. But I think that it's something that needs to be forestalled. Otherwise, probably looking at another way of making sure that people who are giving this fertilizer have a way of accounting for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, you're speaking to the chiefs of Navrongo. So your thoughts on this, Ghanaians taking fertilizers to Burkina Faso?
Well, I think that the president's opening statement that let's band together and stop smuggling of fertilizer, it's something that everybody will welcome. Every well-meaning Ghanaian will welcome that. But governance is about action, more action and less talk. I don't see how much authority or how much power or strength traditional authorities have that government doesn't have. I mean, government calls the shots at all fronts in this country. And so one would expect that government will be seen to be putting in place measures to forestall what is identified as a problem, rather than calling on others to what do you call it, help stop it. Having said that, I think this is also a policy issue, really, because when you identify a problem, you need to put together your policy minds and try and define exactly what the problem is, because the way you define the problem will determine the kind of solution you come up with. And if we see it only as bad individuals smuggling our fertilizer, we may not find a solution.
What do you think the problem is?
We need to find out what are the processes, the mechanisms involved in administering the policy that provides the subsidy. And if we review that particular process more thoroughly, we may be able to identify that there are some lapses or loopholes along that value chain. And when you close those lapses, you may then weaken the ability of people or eliminate the incentives along the value chain for people who otherwise want to be involved in this kind of action.
Thank you.
And so for me, it's a policy issue, and it must go beyond talk. There must be more action from the government side.
Thank you very much. Dr. Michael Kpessa Whyte is NDC parliamentary aspirant for Shai Osudoku. Do you want to say hi to the people?
Yes, of course. I mean, all my good people in Shai Osudoku, I greet you all, and I'm looking forward to a good time on the 24th with you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And we also have Eric Amoako, government spokesperson. Thank you so much.
I'm interested in the constituency, I'll tell you.
When? Say it.
No, no. I follow rules and regulations.
Thank you so much for
help me
sticking
campaign.
with us. No. Don't go anywhere. Breakfast Daily will be right back.